All right, ladies and gents, welcome back to episode 2 of FirstRow Pod. I'm here with my good friend Jonathan Koganov. Sadly, a Knicks fan. He, like everyone else, indulged in the Last Dance documentary. So we're just going to go back and forth on what it means to be a Knicks fan and how it pretty much sucks, and go over the Last Dance. So, Jonathan, introduce yourself. You have the floor. Go for it.
Jonathan, 10
I'm
years a Knicks
Jonathan.
fan. 10 years a Knicks fan, 10 years
And
sadness,
oh my God.
20 years sadness. A lot of sadness in this organization. It's never going to get better.
So I used to watch the Knicks. I used to be a pretty casual fan until 2013. And 2013 was that year that they lost to the Pacers. And I was in it. I was like, let's go Knicks! Like, we got it this year. Knicks is back, And then they lost to the Pacers, and everything from there I feel like just went downhill with the Knicks.
It was the first playoff series that they won in 13 years. They hadn't won
Against the
one since
Celtics, right?
1999. Yep, against the Celtics. That's the game. That's the series where JR was like throwing elbows, throwing punches. It was like a real like 90s Knicks feel for
Mhm.
playoffs. And we beat the Celtics, like these rivals, like the second team ever in the NBA. It was this huge game and this huge series, all to lose to the Pacers in six.
And J.R. Spliff just chucking up shots was, you know, he'd
Tying on
shoot
people's shoes.
he'd shoot from anywhere. And I think he was the uncontrolled Steph Curry before Steph Curry. And he was a character. Like, you could compare him to like JaVale McGee type of character that he was when JaVale McGee was younger. He was a fool. He was an absolute fool, and he was fun to watch, and he was really like charismatic. And I think when he got to New York, he knew like what New York wanted. He knew how to be New York and how to feed to that New York media and the New York crowd. So he really drove a lot of that Knicks team along with Melo. Um,
A
but
lot of these
after
role
that,
players, a lot of these role players really carried that team. Steve Novak, Landry Fields,
Novak, man, Novak was a
the
legend.
double
Like
belt.
Novak, Landry Fields,
Who else was on that team? Anthony Douglas, like just
ran
random
the
role
people, ran the
players.
people.
Yeah,
True to Knicks fashion, ran the people, 1 year
yeah.
deals. See how it
Tyson
works.
Chandler.
Tyson
Yeah,
Chandler was a beast. Tyson Chandler rebounded the ball better than I saw anyone rebounding the ball in the NBA at that
at that
time.
time, yeah, he developed that tap out.
The tap
Yeah,
out was his thing. The
yeah.
tap out always from like right below, and he'd smack it out to the
Over to
3 point
the
line, and you
to
just
Novak.
reset. But
Yeah,
what do you really think led to the Knicks' demise? I mean, we know, James Dolan. He's sitting on a gold mine. He pretty much has the mecca of sports, literally the mecca of sports, in his lap. He has such a huge empire in MSG and the MSG company, and fans are always calling for him to sell the team, sell the team, sell the team. Obviously, if James Dolan sells the team, it would be better off for the Knicks. But why would someone who's sitting on a gold mine like that sell the team? It doesn't make sense. People just they want to sell the team because they want to see the Knicks do well, and they don't think about, okay, James Dolan is literally sitting on a bucket of gold. He's not selling this thing unless like the NBA literally intervenes and says, hey, you need to go because you're
Ooh, yeah.
dragging down the quality of our league.
Right. I think at this point it's been 20 years since he took over. One playoff series win. It's obvious he's not selling the team. The conversation has to move away from him selling the team and towards taking autonomy away from him. Like, don't
Mhm.
let him make any decisions at all. And this is what they're trying to do now with all these new front office hires. Leon Rose, he said, and then apparently in the interview he said, like, I'm taking full autonomy away from James Dolan, and I want it for my front office.
Mhm.
So that's where the conversation has to go. It's all right. Obviously, he's not going to sell a $5 billion team. It's a bad business decision. He's a businessman. The conversation now has to be, what can we do to attract players here despite our bad ownership?
Yeah,
So,
and that's the issue where last season you have fans thinking like, dude, we're gonna get Kyrie, we're gonna get KD, and we're gonna draft Zion. We have two max spots. We're getting KD, we're getting Kyrie, we're drafting Zion. Knicks is back. Once again, every year they just seem to be building these lackluster rosters. Um, they're infamous for bringing on veteran guys on 1-year deals and thinking like, "Hey, we're gonna get a chip out of this." That's what the Knicks fans do every year. Oh, we look good on paper. We look good on paper, and in reality, you don't look good on paper because you're not putting in to the quality, and you're not investing in the youth that's in basketball now. You're relying on veterans who really, yeah, they have experience, but on 1-year deals, how motivated are they towards the team success rather than them trying to just
Mm.
pad their stats and saying, okay, I need to use this season as a way to get me a good contract because I don't want to be on a 1-year deal with the Knicks and I don't want to have to rely on the Knicks as my future.
At this point, it's also impatience. They spent so much money on players like Joakim Noah, like 4 years, $75 million. So
Hmm.
there's so many players like this that they just blew money on. At this point, it's just impatience. And the saddest part is that before the season started, James Dolan said, "This is a playoff team. This is an eighth seed team." He
And
said this.
everyone thought that. Every fan said, "All right, we got the eighth seed this year. Like we got Joakim, we got Derrick Rose. We look good. We look good on paper. On paper, it's an eighth seed team, and it's like it's
Yeah,
it's not. No one cares to play in New York for the Knicks. No one cares to have their team success over their personal success because they're playing on 1-year deals, and they have to put on so they could say, here, look what I did with the Knicks last year. Give me an actual contract now. And the Knicks are so established. They're the New York Knicks. They sell out if they're 0-81 and it's the last game of the season, they're going to sell it out because
that's the
they're the Knicks.
problem. That's exactly
You
the
know,
problem.
and that's the issue. There's no pressure on James Dolan and
Exactly.
there's no pressure on management to say, "Hey, we're not doing so well," because you are the largest sports market in the world. There's no pressure on you to bring in income and really have an output on success because you're going to do well in the books better than you'll do well in the standings every single year unless you address the issues and say we need to get younger and we need to get more talented instead of thinking with our pockets and with our wallet all the time. I think you're going to remember this last offseason where you have two max slots, you trade Kristaps Porzingis, you're in the running for the lottery, and obviously the next, they end up with the third spot in the draft, and that's a shot to the heart. And then you're like, all right, so we'll get RJ, and then we still have the two max slots, and you do nothing with the max slots. I think that's going to be something where Knicks fans now, like in our generation, they're going to remember that for the next 20 years if the Knicks don't reform the way they think in the front office and really realize that they need to put out a better product for the NBA instead of just their pockets.
I think the next big decision comes with the coaching staff because
Mhm.
let's say the front office is complete with Leon Rose, his associates, Steve Mills. All right, the front office is done. They took away autonomy from James Dolan. Now comes the coaching decision. So they're between who? Tom Thibodeau, Kenny Atkinson, and maybe Mark Jackson is in the running.
And also, like, Mike Woodson is in the
Yeah,
conversation.
and also Mike Woodson is in the running. But the primary targets are Kenny Atkinson and Tom Thibodeau, I think.
Mhm.
So the problem with hiring Tom Thibodeau, like his name is flashy because he's an established coach. Established. I don't know. He had what, 3 winning seasons in Chicago, maybe because of Prime D Rose. All right, he's a good coach. He came to Minnesota. He had a decent team, not much success. He had one playoff berth. And then you have Kenny Atkinson, who had maybe he's a one-season wonder, but he had an insane run with the Nets. He didn't even have an all-star on that team before Kyrie came. He had Dinwiddie and Levert. He turned them both into all-stars. Playoff berth, like almost winning a playoff series. Like these are the kind of coaches that you need to change the culture. The next big decision comes with coaching. That'll be interesting
Yeah,
to see.
I agree with your take on Kenny Atkinson. I really think Atkinson is a great basketball coach. I think he takes young guys and is a really great leader and a great, guy to look up to coaching. I think if the Knicks are moving forward trying to make a coaching decision, I think Kenny Atkinson is their guy. I think he
I think
he
so.
he's built for New York. You saw he could handle it with the Nets. I don't know what really it's kind of fishy with what happened with him in Brooklyn and his departure with the Nets. I
Yeah,
have a feeling that KD and Kyrie really did have something to do with it. Sadly, do you agree with me? Do you think Kenny Atkinson is the guy for the Knicks?
I totally agree. And he was already a Knicks assistant, so he knows He knows kind of the culture. Like he
Mhm.
knows how to probably talk to James Dolan more than a Tom Thibodeau would. So yeah, I think he's the man for the job.
I think so. I think they should give him a shot. I think they could benefit from him taking the reins there and really controlling RJ Barrett and molding RJ Barrett and the rest of those young guys that are there, like Alonzo Trier and
Mitchell Robinson.
and
Mitchell
Mitchell
Robinson is a
Robinson.
huge piece of this organization right
Mhm.
now.
I think Kenny Atkinson is the guy for the Knicks. Um, so yeah, obviously being a Knicks fan sucks. Their future is in front of them. They have a few key decisions to make that could really mold their future. And I think if they're really going to move forward, like I said, focus on the product you're putting out rather than the name of your building and your brand bringing you revenue. I think it's better for the NBA, you know?
It is, but it's so hard for them to make good decisions when they're going to be the top 5 franchise
Mhm.
money wise, no matter what. It's
No matter
hard.
what.
Like,
Yeah.
I understand there's no pressure, like you said.
So something that was really great for basketball fans while we're in sort of like a layover of COVID-19 and that canceling, well, not canceling, well, kind of just pushing off the season, was the Last Dance documentary with Michael Jordan. And I think for a 20-year-old like you and I, who never really got to see Jordan play, but you always hear about the Jordan legacy and you know who Michael Jordan is, you know who Michael Jordan was, and you know that he was arguably the most dominant player in NBA history. And then you watch the Last Dance documentary. And for me personally, it kind of cemented it. You know, it's like this guy was and is and I think will be for a very long time the greatest athlete of all time. You know, and you hear the goat thing thrown around a lot, but after watching the Last Dance documentary, I can truly say I believe that mentally, physically, spiritually, however you want to describe it, Michael Jordan was the best athlete of all time. And I think he's far ahead of any other athlete that you can, you know, try and name in that discussion.
Right. It's definitely starts with his work ethic. I've never in my life seen a person, an athlete, a nobody work the way that he's worked and pushed his teammates. I had no going into the doc. I had no idea what kind of person he was.
Mhm.
I didn't know how he treated his teammates. All I knew was Michael Jordan, greatness. That's it. Seeing
And
that documentary, seeing the way that he works, there's nothing like it's just inspirational. That's the only word that I can think of. Inspiration and motivation.
I agree.
It's
I
incredible.
agree. And before the documentary, you saw on social media a lot where it's like Michael Jordan is worried that this documentary might taint his legacy and might, you know, kind of put a bad light on him of being a bad guy and you know being a bad teammate. I didn't see it that way, you know, and I think it was like this eighth episode where at the end he kind of broke down a little bit and he's like,
I don't have to do this. I'm only doing it because it is who I am. That's how I played the game. That was my mentality. If you don't want to play that way, don't play that way. Break.
I think it's so amazing how Michael Jordan was able to take basketball and his personal life and kind of separate it. Where when he got on the court, he was locked in, zoned in. You know, obviously you can't win every game, but you have that mentality. When I step on the court, I'm going to put my best foot forward every single night, and I'm going to make sure I do everything in my power that the team comes out successful.
Yeah, it's really incredible. His determination, like it wasn't even about it was regular season aside, let's talk about postseason. He's never seen a finals game 7. In
Mm.
6 finals, he's never seen a finals game 7. He never let his team, no matter what, flu, broken bones, nothing. He never let his team
Flu, big question.
pizza,
Now we don't know about the flu. Now it's the food poisoning
the
game,
food
and now we
poisoning.
don't even know if it's the food poisoning game because the pizza store kind
Yeah,
of
the
said
pizza
came out
guy
and
was
said, "Hey,
like,
that wasn't us. What are you talking about?" You know?
yeah, whatever it was, the sick game. He's incredible. And I see where his teammates are coming from. Some of his teammates did call him out, like Horace Grant called him out for the way he treated him. But he said it himself. If you don't like the way that he plays, like, you can leave the team.
Yeah.
And the fact that these guys stayed with him really shows how much they want to win, but don't want to be that guy. It must have been so hard for him to be that guy. Like he said it himself. It's hard. It's hard to be that teammate, the one
Mhm.
that has to always be on everybody.
And I think when you say that it's hard to be that guy, what really showed it was when he did break down in that last scene of that episode where you really saw how emotional it made him. And you could tell that the documentary didn't really paint the full picture of it definitely showed the kind of media pressure he had around many other topics like the casino scandal and the gambling stuff, but it didn't show the media pressure and just the overall personal pressure of being that guy that's going to be on everyone's ass and going to be the rough-nosed teammate and is going to push you every single day no matter what, where at the end of that episode I feel like it lifted all that weight off his shoulders and he was brought to tears by it, and it shows how much he had to do it and how hard it was to deal with it day in and day out. And then, 20 years after your career is over, you finally get to let it out of your system and just get it off your chest and get it off your shoulders and take that deep breath and say, this is who I was, you know, and it's so personal to me. That's why I had to let it all out in that last scene, and taking the personal note, what drove MJ's success, what you see from the documentary, what drove his success is that he took everything personal. You cannot breathe next to MJ without him saying, "Oh yeah, okay, watch this." You know, Tony Kukoc, literally just trying to play basketball in Europe. He's like trying to just mind his own business, and Jerry Krause thinks so highly of Tony Kukoc, and it's like, all right, you think Tony Kukoc is all that? Watch what we do to him. And they literally like obliterated this kid. And I was watching it, and I saw this kid's face, and it's like, I feel so bad, like he was just trying to mind his own business and play ball, and then you have MJ where, nah, not on my watch.
Yeah.
You cannot
And
say anything to MJ. He literally made stuff up in
yeah.
his head, like,
Yeah.
good game, MJ. He literally made that up in his head to say, all right, watch what happens next time we play. It's crazy.
It's pretty incredible that he's fueled by just this feeling of competition. He's always
Mhm.
competing. Even when he was playing with cards, like with Magic Johnson, or he was in the casino gambling. He's always competing. Every single moment of his life is a competition.
He can't even go play golf without thinking like, all right, I
Yeah,
gotta kick this guy's ass.
yeah. And the fact that it started with him getting cut from a high school team, and that's basically what like triggered this competitive nature. It's incredible. It's
And
really
I think that's a great point for the kids where it's like Michael Jordan got cut from his high school team, and then after that he became MJ. So something that's really arguable, and I mean to some capacity, how much do you think Scottie Pippen and Dennis Rodman played into Michael Jordan's success and and how much of his legacy is built on the support that Scottie Pippen and Dennis Rodman gave him through his playing career?
uh, it's hard. It's hard to say.
Because
Um,
it's MJ, like it's MJ. You don't really think anyone could really boost MJ, but I think
yeah,
Scottie Pippen, Dennis Rodman, and Michael Jordan was like, I think it's like the first big three we can think of.
no. You can always bring up the argument that he didn't win before Scotty. He never actually won really anything before Scottie Pippen. He didn't reach the finals. Maybe he won a few playoff series here and there, but Scottie Pippen came three-peat. You know,
Mhm.
so you can't downplay Scottie Pippen. You can't downplay his support, and Scotty was like one of his teammates that just endured all of MJ's competitive spirit. Like MJ was beating on
Mhm.
everybody. Scotty was the nice guy, you know?
Mhm.
And that Scotty brought that dynamic to the team. He brought like, it's almost like good and evil. So
Yeah.
Scotty was a huge, huge part of MJ's success. You can't downplay Scotty's support. Scotty was MJ's supplement. He was his balance.
And I think when Dennis Rodman came after the first three-peat, um, Dennis Rodman was a guy who I think really embodies old school basketball. Not old school like Larry Bird prime, but like old school 90s basketball. I think Dennis Rodman is a guy where when you think of 90s basketball, you think MJ, you think Scotty, and at the same time, you also think Dennis Rodman, who's really just an absolute pit bull on the basketball court.
He
He
learned
was
all that. He
everywhere,
learned all
and
that.
you have his little
Now I hit the rim.
ball goes this way, click. Ball goes
Yeah.
that way, click.
Yeah.
Little
The ball spin, and when MJ shoots, it spins 3 times. And Scotty shoots, it spins twice.
and I
Yeah.
think it goes to show how much Dennis Rodman really was a student of the game. You know all about Dennis Rodman's antics, his Vegas partying tirades, his wrestling career,
Yeah.
just all the BS that Dennis Rodman put the Chicago Bulls through. When he got on the court, he said it himself. I'm gonna give you everything I got when I'm on the court. I'm gonna be a fool. That's just who I am. I'm Dennis Rodman. But when I get on the court, I am Dennis Rodman. You know, there's no messing with me.
Right.
I am an absolute pit bull on the court. I'm gonna try and get every single rebound. I'm gonna try and, put myself on the floor as many times as I can, get myself tangled up as many times as I can, and I'm gonna play hard-nosed basketball whether you like it or not.
It's ironic that he learned all this behavior from the Bad Boy Pistons. Like
Mhm.
MJ's rivals, like the fire in MJ's chest were the Bad Boy Pistons. And he brings this energy. He brings that late 80s Isaiah Thomas energy. And to think that Jordan just coexisted with Rodman like that is incredible, because they were such nasty rivals. It was blood every game.
I think Dennis Rodman really did bring along that Bad Boys Pistons ego and personality and style of play to the Bulls, and I really think it was a good equalizer to the Bad Boy Pistons when they had to play them. And then without Dennis Rodman, how aggressive were the Bulls? How tough were they without Dennis Rodman?
Yeah. People were questioning their toughness when they were fighting against the Knicks in the semis, or the conference finals rather. Everybody was questioning their toughness because at that time, like mid-90s Knicks, it was a tough team. With Ewing, Starks, like they were a physical, tough team. And Charles Oakley, who was a foreign Bull. So people were questioning their toughness and where are they going to get this hard-nosed basketball? Like, who's going to do the dirty work on this team? It wasn't MJ. It wasn't Scotty. It wasn't Steve Kerr. He wasn't going to do the dirty work. So Dennis Rodman he's an incredible pickup.
Dennis Rodman was just that guy that was going to get his hands dirty every single night, if he wasn't in Vegas. And then you have Jerry Krause, who, no matter what you could say about him, he was the mastermind behind it all. Who drafted MJ? Who put that team together? Who got Scottie Pippen onto that team? Who got Dennis Rodman onto that team?
Yeah.
Who hired Phil Jackson? I think Jerry Krause, as much as he was a jerk and how much he really turned their back on that whole squad, he was responsible for putting it together. He was the mastermind behind it all. He got MJ on the court. He got Pippen on the court. He got Rodman on the court. He got all those other role players on the court. And then, he brought in the absolute genius that we know of as Phil Jackson. So as much as they, really bullied Jerry Krause, you can't smoke no cigar. Jerry, you too little. You're taking those the hype pills and stuff like that, where they ragged on Jerry Krause, and I think they really had some spitefulness for Jerry Krause just because of the way he handled that last season. And he came out publicly and said, "This is Phil Jackson's last season as head coach." And it's like, all right, Phil Jackson was like, all right, I guess so. I guess it's my last season as head coach if Jerry Krause says so.
Yeah.
I think they could have went for 7. Jordan talks about it a little bit at the end of the documentary. They could have went for 7 if Jerry Krause was willing to keep it together, but he wasn't. And for whatever reason it was, he was like, all right, no matter what happens this season, we're rebuilding, and the dream for 7 is not going to happen. We can try and push and pull as much as we can. The dream for 7 isn't happening. We're rebuilding at the end of the season, even if we win. And I don't understand the logic behind it. Obviously, I can't put myself in Jerry Krause's shoes, but I think it would be interesting if we got a little bit more of information why he wanted to break it up
Yeah.
so badly, why he was so against putting that putting that squad back on the floor for another season. Um, Obviously, you have Scottie Pippen's little back and forth with the contract situation. When he had that
Mhm.
injury, he sat out, and then he sits down when he doesn't get that call for the last shot.
Mhm.
I feel like there was a lot going on behind the scenes with that Bulls team, and you could see it after the documentary where they all have these reactions of, "Oh, that didn't happen. I can't believe Michael Jordan said this." Scottie Pippen is irate after the way he was portrayed in the Last Dance documentary. I think there was a lot more happening behind the scenes with the Bulls than we saw. We just saw a lot of MJ behind the scenes and how he dealt with the pressure and how he dealt with the day in and day out.
I don't really understand why the Jerry Krause stuff was kept private. It could have been money. It could have been they didn't have money to pay. I'm sure Scotty wanted a bigger contract at that point. He
Yeah,
was he was being paid like a role player for entire three beats.
to
So
be like the second best player in the NBA.
exactly. So where it could have been money, it could have been financial. Where do you find the money to pay for the biggest, not even athlete, one of the biggest figures,
In the
influential
world.
figures in the world of all time? How do you pay him, his counterpart, Dennis Rodman, maybe the biggest personality in the NBA?
Then you think about, how much Phil Jackson had to do with it, if he had any, bearing on the decision, and he probably did, because you have to compensate a coach that just won 6
Yeah.
championships. Phil Jackson is a guy that moved on after the Bulls and became, the great head coach that we know him of as usual with the Lakers, and I think really molded young Kobe Bryant to, be that great player. um, I think obviously Kobe Bryant was going to be great regardless, but I think having Phil Jackson around, being that figure for a young guy, I think it went a long way of with Kobe's success having Phil Jackson around. We were having this argument, while the Last Dance was still going on. Which team do you think Phil Jackson was, a better basketball coach with? You know, Obviously he's a legend all around, but where do you think he had to put more work into coaching?
The Bulls.
Mhm.
I would say the first three-peat with the Bulls. It's he created a system from the ground. He had to come up with the triangle offense from the ground. He started from scraps, and he built this incredible system that worked for two teams.
To me, I think where Phil Jackson walks on and he already has the best basketball player of all time at his disposal in MJ. Scottie Pippen right beside him, throw Dennis Rodman in there, and it's kind of established. You know,
Right.
your presence in the league with the guys that you have on the court is established. You're a team to be afraid of no matter what. You sort of just had to keep egos in check. You have to deal with Dennis Rodman, which is an absolute handful. Um, and you have a lot of pressure to deal with media wise. You have MJ. There's a whole buzz around the team, and I think he was sort of like more of an ego manager with the Bulls, more of than he was really a coach with the Lakers, where he has to take someone who is an absolute amazing talent and mold him into an NBA player. I feel like with the Lakers, you really have to do more of teaching the game, more of just dealing with egos, which pretty much 80% of coaching in the NBA is dealing with egos all the time, as compared to like coaching in college and coaching in high school, where you really, you're teaching and developing the game less more than you are in the NBA.
I would argue that um, Jordan's dominance when Jackson took over is equivalent to Shaq's dominance when Jackson took over. I don't know if you agree, but that's my standing. Shaq was already probably the most dominant force in the NBA at that point, just like Jordan was. Kobe, who's an open-minded basketball player, is always trying to learn. I think that it's easier for him to learn the triangle offense than it would be Jordan, who's already the most dominant player in the league. Um, for Shaq, I think it's also easier to learn the triangle because it fits him. It fits the center. It fits the low
Yeah,
post player. It doesn't fit this. the score first shooting guard as much as the low post center. They have to work in tandem, but it for any big person like Shaq, the triangle offense is perfect. So teaching Kobe and Shaq, I think the triangle offense was easier than teaching Jordan and Scottie.
I just think that when you come onto the scene with the Lakers and you have that Kobe and Shaq rift and you really have a raw talent in Kobe Bryant, you really know the task at hand is developing this kid, all while coaching the rest of the team and sort of molding him to being the leader of that team. Rather, when you are with the Bulls, you know Jordan's the leader. You know Jordan is taking the big shot, and you know Jordan is really your voice as the coach. You know when you're not around. So I think when you have that with the Bulls, that dynamic with the Bulls, and a pretty different dynamic with the Lakers, where you really have to take this young kid and mold him into the absolute great he was. I think it's more of a difficult task than it was with the Bulls.
Yep. Not to take anything away from either of those teams, like
No, absolutely do. They both really they are both what's amazing about the history of basketball was that Bulls team winning 6 championships and that Lakers team winning 5 championships, and they really put out the two greatest athletes of all time. Um, not even basketball players at that point.
Yeah.
Just two amazing figures, two amazing athletes, two amazing human beings that really were a big part of the game and just a big part of society overall.
they were so culturally relevant.
Mhm.
Everybody, like, it's just incredible. I don't know if it's Phil Jackson. I don't know if it's if it's Kobe and Jordan's natural talent, but what they did for basketball I don't think is ever going to be matched again.
I absolutely agreed. I think basketball, I think number 23, and I think number 24. Absolutely. So that'll pretty much wrap it up. I think we really hit some great topics on The Last Dance and just, you know, how crappy it is to be a Knicks fan.
It's going to stay that way for a while.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you for being on. Absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for being on.